islands in northwest Mexico related to seabirds. So in Mexico there's been a very high interest on birds.
Can you speak up a bit, please?
Yes. There's been a very high interest on birds in general, but through the indigenous cultures, the pre-Hispanic cultures, and especially for the seabirds. We have been working with a Native American group, the Comcac, or more known as Seabirds. And as you can see, there's a very rich, these are only the birds the seabirds that breed in the Midriff Island region. They have names for each one of them, and they know their behavior, they know what habitat they use, what is their ecology, and some names are related to I call it idiosyncratic. For example, the shearwater is called, it believes it's a booby. If you see them in the sea flying, they believe they're boobies. And for example, these storm petrels, they're called bounces on the sea because of the way they fly. Or for example, the pelican is called the bird that plunges. So most of the names are related to their behavior, their habitat, or what they think they are. Or they're onomatopoeic. For example, the cormorant is it's called related. The name of the bird is related to its vocalization. So it's called tonk, and that's similar to the way they vocalize. So they have a very deep knowledge of all the seabirds that they have in the area because they're very closely living, very close to these birds. There's also another, after the conquest or the arrival of the Europeans, there was a long history of conservation that started more or less in the time when George Lindsay and Robert Orr and Louis Wayne Walker were doing their research in the area. And they saw the islands that were very rich in endemic species, and they were very important for seabird nesting. So Charles Lindbergh even flew to Mexico City to talk with the president and ask him to declare the Gulf of California islands and other areas as protected to conserve these habitats and the species that live there. There's also been some local researchers that have worked in the area, like Dr. Bernardo Villa from the University of Mexico, and local people, for example, Antero Diaz from Bahía de Los Ángeles. So this is a long history, even compared to the Gulf of Mexico, which was like the Europeans arrived there first, and then to the Gulf of California, but the Gulf of Mexico does not have such a long history of conservation. And also there's, for example, at the beginning of the exploration of the area, people like Federico Crabtree went to explore and see if there were good islands with good guano potential for exploiting guano. And this is a little piece of one of his journals where he is telling that they arrived to Isla Raza, and they saw it was covered with gulls and pelicans, and these latter, the pelicans, had small chicks, and the gulls were initiating the egg laying. So That was a gift for the crew because they went and collected all the eggs to eat. That was very natural and normal for them at that time. And then later, a little further along the journal, he says that one of the crew members collected a falcon, two falcons, a large one and a small one, which had chicks, which had family. And also one collected one raven. So for them it was like normal to go to the islands and collect specimens. So this was part, of course, of the history of the exploration and research in the early days. There's also been guano extraction. For example, this is Isla Patos. This picture was provided by Dan Anderson. This is in the late 70s. And nowadays, the island, they stopped extracting the guano several decades ago. And now the island is recovering the vegetation. Yellow-footed gulls are nesting there. And there's a colony of pelicans that you cannot see because we did not approach close enough. But you can see pelicans flying here. This is a little hill, and the colony is behind that hill. By the way, this island, if you see it from the top, it has the form, there's this little mountain, and then the island, and then it has like a long tail. So it's called Hill with a Tail by the CONCAC. It's also very descriptive of what the island looks like. So then, after the guano extraction, there was also egg collection, and it used to be a severe threat in the mid-1900s, or the first half of the 19th century, the 20th century. But these activities, when the islands became protected, these activities stopped, almost. There's still a little bit of egg collection by locals in some areas, but it's not nearly as heavy and negative as it used to be. So then what we can identify presently as threats are some direct human disturbance of the nesting colonies by locals fishermen sometimes camp on the islands. And there's other types of visitors, like tourists, who might walk along the colonies or close or in the colonies and disturb the nesting birds, even causing predation of eggs and chicks. Then there's egg collectors, very, very few now, fortunately. Then we are also a source of disturbance, researchers or technicians. Other professionals like photographers, filmmakers, or journalists, who can, just by going close to the colonies, disturb the area. Then there's the fisheries, which is divided into bycatch and overfishing of the food resource, and then the climate change, which causes the alteration of the food resource availability or the alteration of the breeding schedules of the birds. For example, the direct human disturbance, as I was dividing it in the slide before this one, is, for example, the use of nesting islands by fishermen, either short-term, maybe 1 or 2 days, or they even settle camps that are for several weeks. And then there's also the tourists that might walk through the colonies. Egg collection that is quite rare, and then researchers or technicians, sometimes we produce very high damage because we can alter the breeding behavior, the breeding sites, disturb or destroy nesting habitat, or cause injuries to the subjects we're studying. So we have to be very, very, very careful to avoid this. And then there's the professional photographers that can do also any one of these above activities and cause harm to the nesting birds. For example, in the case of the fisheries, there's the bycatch. These are photographs that were provided by a journalist in Guaymas. And pelicans are particularly prone to be victims of this problem because they need a long distance to take off. So maybe sometimes they're trapped in the nets and they're oiled by the fish oil that is floating here, or they might even go up with when they gather the net and die crushed by the mechanism, the fishing mechanism. Then there's also the overfishing of the food resource, which we have noticed. For example, we have compared the sardine landings and the number of elegant terns that are not nesting on Raza and have gone to the California colonies. And so it's very clear that when this is the colony size in pairs of Raza, and this is the fishing effort and landings. So it's very clear that when landings and fishing effort go up, the number of nesting birds in Raza go down. And when, as you can see in the last 10 years, 10 or 15 years, we have also done some analyses that show that there's an effect of the midriff sea surface temperature the year before. The fishing effort the year before, that's why it's T-1. Sardine landings, and that affects the proportion of elegant terns nesting away from the island, as well as in the same year. So these factors are very, very important, and they combine. Then there's the last slide shows the effect of the climate change and the warming, both general and local, with the number of terns nesting on Raza. Thank you very much.